Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm in the studio. We're live. You know what to do by now. Get involved in the comments and the chat and let us know what you think about all the latest Manchester United stories we'll be covering. There's a lot to go through, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Pretty much none of it is positive. It is all bad news at the minute at Manchester United Football Club. It just seems to be a never-ending conveyor belt of rubbishness. So we'll get into all that. We're going to be talking about what's happening with Antony, what's going on with Jadon Sancho. We're getting into Sofian Amrabat. They could have an injury there. We already know that the sale might be off as well, which is another one to make us even more depressed. And there's a couple of other stories as well. So do get involved in the comments and the chat. You might not like the stories, but like the video. Loads of people in the chat already. Harry Westwood says late. Yes, apologies for that. We're a little bit late. GT, Sam Sharkey, Koya Trot, Anas Tijoka, Captain Longsmart also saying morning. Yep, Harry saying J lad. Right, let's get into this first one. So Erik ten Hag, Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag stands by Jadon Sancho comments. So this is the way the Evening News have worded this. Is like he's standing by his comments, but he hasn't really said anything about it, which means he's standing by it. I think is what they're getting at, because the fact he's not come out, he's not said anything, he's not dismissed them or gone back on what he said. Is like he's standing by them, which I suppose is one way of looking at it. Could argue it's true. We know what's going on, but I'll recap it anyway. Erik ten Hag was asked about Jadon Sancho not playing in the Arsenal game, not even being in the squad. He answered words to the effect that the levels at training weren't quite there, so he wasn't picked. Jadon Sancho then did I think it was a Twitter post saying that don't believe everything you read. I always give my all in training, etc., etc. More or less arguing or sort of saying what the manager was claiming wasn't true. So it's created a bit of a storm, and you can put a swear word in front of that, to say the least. So you've got this sort of situation now where you've got Jadon Sancho and Erik ten Hag both saying the opposite of each other. You've got Erik ten Hag throwing a little bit of shade at Jadon Sancho, sort of saying, you know what, he wasn't good enough in training, that's why he's not in the squad. Jadon Sancho pushing back on that, more or less saying he's lying, saying he's being scapegoated as well, which is what Jadon Sancho said, and said there's other reasons for these comments, sort of alluding to that idea as well. So it's not great, is it, when you've got a player and a manager publicly sort of calling each other out or arguing, however you want to term it. Now, you can see that Erik ten Hag hasn't really said much about it, so he's sort of standing by what he said, unless we see a statement from him or the club. Actually, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. There's also an article in The Guardian. You can see here, Dominic Booth. It says, Manchester United back Erik ten Hag as tensions build with Jadon Sancho. Sancho claims he has been made a scapegoat by United manager. Player set to meet with ten Hag in attempt to resolve the issue. Goes on to say Man United are standing by Erik ten Hag's comments about Jadon Sancho. Now, there's several ways to look at this, and I'm going to get into a bit more about Jadon Sancho in a minute, but I don't think that Jadon Sancho set the world alight since he's come to United from Dortmund. I don't think Jadon Sancho is a player who's guaranteed to start when everyone's fit. He should be making the squad. He should be at least on the bench. I mean, he's not that bad. He's a good player, but this is part of the problem. You've got a manager calling out a player who, I think if a decent offer would have come in for him in the summer, probably would have gone. So United can probably afford to, well, they should always back the manager anyway, but he can probably afford to back the manager when it comes to him having a bit of a fallout with Jadon Sancho, because Jadon Sancho has been okay for Manchester United, but he's not been that great. So that doesn't help Jadon Sancho in his cause, because he can't exactly argue that he's integral to Manchester United, and that if he's not playing or he's dropped from the squad or if he's fell out with the manager, that's going to massively harm Manchester United. It will harm us a bit. I think he should be in the squad and we should be using him, but I think if everyone's fit, I don't think Jadon Sancho necessarily plays, although there might be another opportunity along that front three, which I'll get to in a minute. Just on Jadon Sancho as well, it's not the only time or the first time that there's been questions about his application in training or his timekeeping or anything like that. I know Erik ten Hag didn't say it was his timekeeping, but there's an article in the Mail I think we've got where it says Jadon Sancho's timekeeping exasperates his bosses. Training levels are not up to scratch for club or country. England give him a wide berth over his sulking and Chelsea snubbed move. So the article there goes on to say that there's been issues in the past with Jadon Sancho, and I think it speaks about his time at England and how when he wasn't picked, there was a feeling that he was sulking, and it was like negative vibes, if you want to call it that, from him around the rest of the squad when he wasn't picked. There was talk about how his training wasn't great and his timekeeping wasn't great. This is an issue that's been raised in the past. I think it was at Dortmund. There was questions about his training, questions about his timekeeping as well. I think he came back might have been from international duty. He came back from the international duty back to Dortmund. He was late. So there's been a few question marks there about the way he applies himself in training and the way he keeps his time. So this isn't the first instance. This is certainly one of the most public instances it's happened. The most high profile, when you've got a manager calling you out after one of the biggest games of the season and saying the reason you weren't even on the bench is because of the way you've been conducting yourself in training. But when you look at the history of Jadon Sancho, there's probably something there when you can go, okay, does Erik ten Hag have a point? This doesn't feel like a one-off. Get involved in the comments and the chat. Let us know what you think. Dark Elysium says he was like that at Dortmund and also still at City. Yeah, there was a couple of questions there about whether, I think even going back to his City days, about whether he was always fully focused. Santa Notch says, I can only imagine him in training when Keano was captain. Bloody hell. Yeah, I can too. Phil Berry says, get him gone. Ryan Milligan says, we were unlucky at Arsenal until the worst centre-back partnership in the Prem came on the pitch. I know, I just don't want to even talk about Arsenal anymore. Jace Parker says, morning Jay, love your work. Thank you, Jace Parker. Always great to see you. Scott Gacko says, he's not been very good. Upheaval says, how is Sancho a good player? Where's the evidence? He has been a good player. He is a good player. I don't think he's a bad player. I think we've seen enough of him. We've seen enough of him to show he's a good player. I just don't think we've seen it consistently enough at Manchester United at all. I can't remember, I think Steve brought this up on the podcast, where you've had 5 or 6 weeks of Jadon Sancho playing consistently well. I can't remember even where you've had like 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 games where he's been good. Most of the games he's been good in, it tends to be in fits and starts. You'll have sort of 10, 15-minute spells where he's involved or whatever. He's not one of those players that tends to do it week in, week out at Manchester United. He did it at Dortmund, especially towards the end of his time at Dortmund. Well, just during his career at Dortmund, you look at his numbers, they were great. He was basically, I think in his final season, it was a goal or an assist a game. It was goal every game, he had a goal involvement. At Manchester United, he's not got anywhere near those numbers. Now, I get the Premier League is harder than the Bundesliga, and there's mitigating circumstances, but considering how much we spent, considering all the hype, the amount of time we spent getting him, considering how good Jadon Sancho can be, I don't think we've seen enough of that Manchester United Football Club. Do you agree? Let me know what you think. Petey says, hasn't put back-to-back games, Jay. Santa Notch says, Sancho was the next big thing 3 years ago in the media. I wonder if he suffers an issue of believing his own hype. Koth Mike says, it's on top for us United fans at the minute. Yep, I agree. It is a bit on top in it. It just feels like there's one thing after another. Stato92 says, Sancho is lazy. Antony provides nothing. Bring in Palestri. At least Højlund will get some service. Drip says, hey Jay, we are a shambles. It's hard to argue we're not a shambles at the minute. It just feels like it's one thing after another. Hit that like button, please. Give us a like. You might not like what's going on, but you can like this video. Should we move on from Jadon Sancho? Because that's one thing Erik ten Hag's going to deal with, and we'll find out what's going to happen. We'll see if they are going to have these talks, get this resolved, whether Jadon Sancho comes out with an apology, whether they do, maybe, I was chatting to Joe before and he made a good suggestion that maybe in one of the Champions League presses where you have a player, it's Jadon Sancho and the manager, maybe that sort of shows solidarity, or does Jadon Sancho maybe move to Saudi Arabia, which is the thing what Rio Ferdinand was suggesting could happen. We'll have to wait and see, but it's not a happy time for Jadon Sancho at Manchester United at the minute, and it needs resolving, because these things, like that article said about how if you've got one player in the England camp, who's fuming, it can have an effect on the other players. If you've got a player in United camp who's fallen out with the manager, that can have a knock-on effect. That can cause issues. We know Jadon Sancho as well. It's quite close to Marcus Rashford. It puts him in a situation where you've got your Bezzy and your manager at loggerheads. Not good. Not a good place for anyone to be in. So it needs sorting sooner rather than later. There's an international break. Jadon Sancho isn't away with England. So hopefully him and the manager can speak to each other and one way or another get it sorted. Because you can't have this going on at Manchester United. It's going to undermine everything. Talking of undermining everything, let's talk about Antony. So, you can see here from Fabrizio Romano's tweet, the Brazilian Federation pulled Antony out of the squad yesterday following the allegations that his ex-partners made against him regarding domestic violence, domestic abuse So I'm going to talk about that just to give you a bit of a heads up. I'm not going to go into great detail, but that is one of the subjects here. Fabrizio Romano says, Brazilian Federation official statement on Antony drops after investigation in order to safeguard the alleged victim, the player, the Brazilian national team, and the CBF. The organisation informs that Antony has been removed from the Brazilian national team. So he's been taken out of the Brazilian national team after those allegations, which I mentioned earlier. He responded, or around the same time, I think he put an Instagram post on. So I think we've got that. He says, this is taken from a Twitter account who's tweeted it, but this is from Anthony's Instagram. It says, out of respect for my fans, friends and family, I feel obligated to speak publicly about the false accusations I've been a victim of. These are his words, by the way, not ours. These are his words. From the beginning, I've handled this issue seriously and with respect, providing the due clarifications to the police authority. The police inquest is under cover of justice, and therefore I cannot make its content public. However, I can say with confidence that the accusations are false and that the evidence already produced and more to be produced show that I am innocent of the accusations made. My relationship with Miss Gabriella was tumultuous, with verbal offences from both sides, but I've never practised any physical aggression. Every time, whether in testimony or in interview, she presents a different version of the accusations. Thus, I come to deny the accusations made and inform that I remain at the full disposal of the Brazilian authorities to clarify what is needed. I trust the ongoing police investigations will reveal the truth about my innocence. Now, it's not just in Brazil where these accusations are as well. I think there's accusations that some of these incidents took place in Manchester, and Greater Manchester Police could be looking into this as well. So this is obviously puts the club in a situation here, a difficult situation, and one that needs addressing, because we saw it with Mason Greenwood when he was, I think first he was under investigation, then he was charged, the club suspended him. Now, there's an article in The Guardian as well, I'm going to get some of your comments in a minute, that Manchester United are under pressure after Brazil drop Antony over assault claims. Tom Phillips, reporting from Rio de Janeiro, say Manchester United are under pressure to drop the £84 million forward Antony after Brazil withdrew the footballer from their latest squad following serious allegations made by his former girlfriend, Gabriella Cavallin, a physical assault and the claim that the player threatened to kill her and attacked her with a glass. So, Antony there, I mean, there's a lot to pick through there in that. Obviously, he's had this accusation from his ex-partner. There's Brazilian authorities are looking into that, and now there's other stories doing the rounds that Manchester Police, Greater Manchester Police are looking into it because there's claims that one of the incidents, I'm not sure, so I don't want to speculate, took place in a Manchester hotel last year, or earlier this year, January this year, I think it was. So, if that is the case, if he has been investigated, but if he's being investigated in Brazil, obviously that's a very serious allegation, and the club may act on that alone. If he's also being investigated here in Manchester, then that's another reason where the club have to make some decision on what they are going to do. Are they going to suspend him? It's looking, or it feels, I don't know factually, it feels like something is going to happen. The club are going to have to make either a statement or a statement and a suspension. They're going to have to do something. I can't think you can just ignore this. You've got a player who's just been sent back from his national team because his ex-partner has accused him of domestic violence. That is a huge issue, and you cannot bury your head in the sand with that one. You do have to deal with that, especially as now there are media reports that some of these incidents, or at least one of these incidents, took place in Manchester, and Greater Manchester Police could be investigating as well. It needs dealing with. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Remember as well that especially when there's victims involved, always keep it respectful. Jonathan Rahaman says innocent until proven guilty. Okay, that's one point, and I get it. I agree with that. But does that mean the club just let him play for Manchester United Football Club while all this is going on, or do they have to say no? Whilst this investigation is going on, we suspend you. That's the issue. It's not just the facts of whether he's done it or not, which is obviously a massive question, and we need to know the answer to that. It's the issue of whether he should play for Manchester United whilst this is ongoing. James Maskell says the allegations have been around for a while. They have. There was reports, I think, a few weeks ago, if not a few months ago, about this. So it's not like these allegations have just popped up, but I think it's moving forward now, the investigation. Glenn F says, morning, our kid, loads of emojis. Dan Fenton says it's just a mess, Jay. It is a mess. It is. It's horrible. Ray Nico says, I don't care, he must play. Get involved in the comments and let us know what you think. Keep it respectful, but let us know what you think. Do you want to see Antony playing for Manchester United? Do you think he should be suspended? What do you think should happen? What are your opinions? Kagi Tetler says, this channel is always one-sided, so quick to judge our own players. Rubbish. Not having that one at all. We back players on this channel, and we always have done. But when it comes to serious allegations like this, I think you have to be a little bit more objective than just going, it's a United player, we're going to all get behind him. I think you have to talk about what the club have to do. When there's a legal issue going on like this and a very serious allegation, we've seen him being asked to leave the Brazilian squad. That isn't a small matter. For the Brazilian squad to say, well, or the Brazilian Federation to say, right, well, you can't play for us at the minute because this is going on. And Manchester United should always do the right thing. I know we don't always do that, but we should. So it's something the club needs to think about. Abdullah Ibrahim says, sell Sancho, going back to the Jadon Sancho issue, to a Saudi club, that would help us subvert FFP issues. Other clubs are doing it. Will he go, though? Will he go to a Saudi club? That's the big question, because obviously the massive move, he'll probably get loads of money, despite what Jordan Henderson was claiming today. He said he didn't go to Saudi Arabia for the money, which is a load of rubbish. You get a lot of money if you go to Saudi Arabia. We know that the wages are astronomical. Jadon Sancho might fancy going there for a couple of years. He could come back. He could still be relatively young, and he could get his career in England going again, or maybe go to a club abroad. He's already been to Dortmund, obviously, and played in the Bundesliga. Let us know what you think. Drip says, every week more and more BS for us. Hopefully he's innocent, but I don't know anything anymore. We don't know, do we? We can, you can have your own opinion on it. You can speculate, but you don't know. None of us know what's gone on there. A few people. Corey Chambers says, I fell out of love with football when Fergie left, made some new friends a few years back and started watching again. And with everything going on at the United for the 18 months, I'd rather just give up totally. It's deflating, isn't it? It is deflating when it's just one negative story after one negative story. One player that you might like or you might love and you respect, and then you see he's been accused of something, or you see he's not acting in the way that you think Manchester United players should be acting. You see the manager falling out with players or players falling out with the manager. It's just not a great place at the minute, Manchester United Football Club. Ross Griffin says, use the kids use the kids up top, test the mettle of the rest. Maybe. Should we talk about Mason Greenwood? This will cheer us all up, eh? Jesus wept, it gets worse. Mason Greenwood's gone to Getafe. You can see there, Mason Greenwood strikes a pose in Getafe colours for the first time since sealing deadline day move from Manchester United, as forward shares first message to supporters since joining. Now, he's gone to Getafe on loan. There is a break clause in this, so he could come back in January. And I was watching an interview with Semra Hunter, who works for La Liga TV. She's been on this channel. She knows the stuff about Spanish football. She knows the stuff about La Liga. And she was talking about the possibility that maybe Mason Greenwood could come back to United. That this is a move that could go on for a few months. He could get playing football again, and don't count out the idea of him coming back to Manchester United. Now, I looked at that statement. We read it out, the statement that came from Mason Greenwood, another one from Richard Arnold, the open letter from Richard Arnold, and the statement from the club. And I feel there was enough ambiguity there to suggest that it's not 100% that he won't come back to Manchester United, or the club wouldn't consider bringing him back to Manchester United. I still feel it wasn't like he's done here forever. I don't know, you might disagree. You might say, nah, come on, Jay, that is him done at United. I don't know, though. It does still feel a little bit like there's a door being left slightly ajar for Mason Greenwood to return, especially, you might not like it, but especially if he goes to Getafe and starts absolutely smashing in loads of goals. Are the club going to go, oh, let's bring him back? There'll be a big response. We saw it last time when there was those reports that he was going to rejoin the squad. We saw the reaction from not just from Manchester United fans, but from the media as well, even politicians weighing in with it and getting involved. And you can expect that reaction again if he does come back to the club. But I don't know. I just feel like it's something we can't count out. Alex Toole says, good morning, Jay. Good morning, bro. It's not been a good morning so far with Manchester United news, but good morning to you. Thanks for your support. Make sure you are hitting subscribe to the channel as well. We want to get to 800,000 subscribers. Gary the Boller says, it would be peak Glazer era United to bring him back. Well, someone else is asking, sorry, I'm trying to find these. Brian says, Jay, with these Mason Antony news, will the channel change outward opinions about Qatar ownership? I don't know, but I don't even mean the people on the channel, or will we change outward appearances in terms of opinions, with other people's opinions. You can have your own view on Qatari ownership. I've said it months ago, before we even linked with Qatar, I didn't want us to be owned by any state, whether that's Qatar or anyone else. Criticise City, criticise PSG, and criticise Newcastle about that. I think that brings its own problems. But the other flip side to that is there's not a happy alternative, is there? There's Sir Jim Ratcliffe looked like an alternative. Yeah, that looked like, a better option for me anyway. But then there was also the insinuation that you keep the Glazers on, which isn't great. Then obviously there's the Glazers staying, which, according to a report in the Mail last week, is what could happen, that they could pull out of this sale. They could take the club off the market, which is just so deflating. It makes me want to cry. Cyril Biscuit says, Palestri has more reason to complain than Sancho. Abhinav Verma says, Semra Hunter is correct to highlight it. Arnold in the mud. They didn't sign a striker. Do they actually think Martial can be considered a striker? One player we did sign is Sofyan Amrabat. And I, for one, am looking forward to this lad playing for Manchester United Football Club. Let's have a look. What's the latest story? Oh, here we go. Mark Critchley there. I think we've had Mark on the channel from The Athletic. Says, Manchester United's main business was done earlier, but their transfer window still came to a hectic end, having to haggle with Fiorentina, interest in Fulham's Palhinha, Amrabat's minor back issue. You are? What? He's got a back issue? Yeah, apparently, when he did his medical, they found a back issue. He's got a back injury. Now, don't know the nature of this, don't know how serious it is. I presume it's not that serious, as United wouldn't have signed him. You hope so. I mean, you never know with United. You could have a broken back and we'd still sign him with such a shambles. But from what we're hearing, it's just they found a minor back injury. It wasn't enough to stop the deal happening. The only question now is it enough to stop him playing for Manchester United when the international break ends? You'd like to think it isn't, and he will come straight in for the Brighton game, at least be available, even if he's not starting. But we'll have to wait and see. It does feel a little bit like this isn't as drastic as it could be. But you never know with Manchester United. You just don't know, do you? Get involved in the comments. BMW Racing 1974 says, I have a back issue. Mike P says, FFS, gotta love Man United back issue. Love that. Don't you get the impression at the minute that there's just this air of United being an utter mess and a shambles, and there's just drama constantly. It just feels like over the last few weeks and months, it's just been non-stop. And now it seems to have been cranked up a notch. We've always had the Glazers sort of stuff going on. That's been an issue. We've had the Greenwood stuff going on in the background. That's been an issue. Then when it looks like some of that might be getting resolved, the Glazers going to sell, then all of a sudden they're not. Is Greenwood going to be dealt with? Is he going to move on? Then kind of is, but isn't. Then you have other issues that pop up, like Jane and Sancho and what's going on with him and the manager. Then you have this other issue with Antony coming up. Now you've got little minor things that wouldn't really be a catastrophe, but when you add it all together, like the Amrabat back injury, you think, it's not the end of the world. But then it's like, it just seems to add more drama and more just mess onto this pile of depression that is Manchester United Football Club at the minute. Honestly, it's just like, does it ever end? I'll tell you when it ends, when we lose to Brighton. Oh no, it doesn't, it gets worse. Don't worry, we'll beat Brighton. Julio says, agree, Jay. I'm not trying to make you all doom and gloomy on a Tuesday morning. It's not what we need, is it? The Mancalorian says we are bad back FC. Don Parkinson says Erik Ten Hag is going to have less hair than Jay by the time he leaves United. I don't think it's possible to have less hair than me. Unless he loses his eyebrows, then he's going to have at least the same amount of hair as I've got. Miller95 MUFC says, we're washed, man. Al Mac says, why do we sign players with back issues? Phil Berry says, Jay, you're doing a right job at having to comment on this crap, mate. It's what we do. We report on what's going on in the papers, what they're talking about, and this is what they're talking about. Abhinav Verma says, Jay uses Manscaped, behave, people. Sam Sharkey says, wake me up when September ends. Can I wake you up when the season ends? Can someone wake me up when the season ends? It feels like that already, doesn't it? We're only 4 games in. It's all going wrong already. What's going on? Listen, it's not all doom and gloom. Anyway, let's talk about Eric Bailly. He's usually a bit of good news, and he's usually someone to cheer us up. Eric Bailly, who is one of the craziest players I've ever seen for Manchester United Football Club. Honestly, that out of context Bailly account on Twitter is hilarious because he just does some mad things, doesn't he, Eric Bailly? But he's gone. He's gone to Besiktas. There you go. You can see the Fabrizio Romano tweet. Here we go. Deal agreed. with Ivorian centre-back. There's also a green light from Manchester United for Bailly to leave. He's got Besiktas. Understand it's permanent transfer and Bailly will sign a short-term deal. 1-year contract, free in June 2024. Erik Bailly, if he stayed fit, could have been one of the best centre-backs United have ever seen. Genuinely. Right? Ability-wise, when he was on it, he was fantastic. The issue was he was constantly injured. He was always getting injured. When it came to some of the ability he's got on the ball, his fearlessness, his pace, the timing of his tackles, he could be world class. But he could also be very erratic, and he was always injured. And it's a shame because when he first came in, he was a kind of defender you love. I think, was it the Charity Shield his first game, or was it, I can't remember if it was before that. No, I think it was. I think he came in, didn't he, at the Charity Shield. It was one of his first games against Jamie Vardy, where he was having it with him. I just remember thinking, this is a great player. This is a really exciting player. But then he starts picking up these injuries. He doesn't really get going at Manchester United. And it's such a shame because he could be fantastic. He could also be completely bonkers. He's the only player I've ever known to score an own goal, I think it was in the derby, and then post it on Twitter. I've never seen anything like that. Who does that? Posted a tweet of his own goal. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, if you look at his record at United, in his first season he played 38 games in all competitions, which 25 in the Premier League. Not great, missed a few games. Next season, 13 in the Premier League. Season after that, 12. Season after that, 4. Season after that, 12. Season after that, 4. And then last season he went out on loan to Marseille. So he just never got going, did he, really? Played 113 games, for Manchester United in what? 6 seasons? It's not enough, is it? It's a shame as well because sometimes it can be phenomenal. I remember watching him in pre-season last year against the Scousers in Thailand, and he was unreal. He was everywhere. I remember that game against the Scousers where we beat him 2-1 at Old Trafford and Marcus got a brace, where Erik Bailly still managed to score an own goal and be man of the match. He was that good. It was just a typical Erik Bailly performance. So when he was on it, he was great, but he was just constantly injured. Get involved in the comments in the chat. Let us know what you think. I mean, it's quite telling, isn't it, that we've been using players like Johnny Evans. We brought Johnny Evans back rather than trusting Erik Bailly because the manager's obviously thought, I just can't rely on him. He's just injured all the time. So, yeah, it's a shame. Amrabat Verma says, Jay, even Fred scored a chip in that Bangkok game. That was an anomaly. No, it wasn't. It wasn't an anomaly. It was a Bangkok Century Cup. It's the most important trophy there is. What are you talking about? And that was Liverpool at full strength. I don't care what anyone says. Powell and Pete says, we are being glazered to death. Alan Max says, 35-year-old Johnny Evans crying emoji. Yeah, it's not great, is it? Suzuka Momomo says, Turkey transfer window open till the 15th. And I think the Saudi transfer window is still open. So we might see a bit of movement. Maybe Jadon Sancho goes to Saudi. I've just put a link in the chat, by the way. A little bit of a personal thing. I'm doing a bit of a fundraiser for Cancer Research UK, running 60 miles in the month of September. So 2 miles a day, basically, unless you do 4 miles one day and have a break the next. But I'm doing 2 miles a day, 60 miles in September, raising money for Cancer Research UK. I know times are hard. If you can help out, please do. There's a link in the chat. No worries if you can. I get it. Thank you to everyone for your support on the channel. Thanks to everyone who got involved. Been a good chat, even though the stories have been a little bit depressing. Hopefully, there'll be a bit more positive news as the day gets on. We're going to be chatting later on to Kieran Maguire from The Price of Football. So Joe's going to be chatting to him this afternoon, so look forward to that one. We've also got Uncensored. So yeah, there's other things going on. So make sure you are hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. I've been Jay Motty. This has been The Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.